The air smelled of cedar and courage that crisp October afternoon, but I didn't know it yet. I was 25, sprawled on a checkered blanket in the middle of an upstate New York forest, laughing with my best friend Tasha, when her cousin Javier did something that cracked my world open. It wasn't just the act. It was the way his eyes held mine, like he saw the parts of me I'd spent years hiding. My name's Eli Carter, a graphic designer from Brooklyn with a knack for overthinking and a heart that's been bruised but never broken. Tasha and I had been inseparable since our college days at NYU, where we bonded over late-night ramen and dreams of changing the world. She was the sister I never had, fierce, black, and unapologetically loud, with a laugh that could wake a coma patient. Every fall, she dragged me out of the city for her family's annual picnic in the Catskills, a tradition I'd grown to love for its chaos and warmth. This year, though, she mentioned a new face. Her cousin Javier, fresh from Miami, who'd just moved to New York to figure things out. I didn't think much of it. I was too busy dodging her mom's questions about when I'd settled down and sneaking extra cornbread from the picnic spread. The clearing was alive with Tasha's sprawling family. Uncles grilling ribs, kids chasing each other through the trees, and aunties gossiping over sweet tea. The forest glowed gold and crimson, leaves crunching underfoot as the sun dipped low. I was mid-bite into a peach cobbler when Javier sat down across from me. He was 26, Latino, with warm brown skin and dark curls that fell just shy of his shoulders. His eyes, though God, they were like coffee you wanted to drown in, held a quiet intensity that made my stomach flip. He wore a faded denim jacket, sleeves rolled up, and a smile that felt like it was just for me. "Eli, right?" he said, his voice smooth with a hint of a Miami drawl. "Tasha says you're the artsy one." I laughed, brushing crumbs off my jeans. "She says a lot of things. You're the mysterious cousin." Then, he grinned, leaning forward. "Guess you'll have to find out." That was the start. We talked for hours, about his photography gigs in Miami, my late-night design binges, and how we both hated small talk but couldn't stop. There was something easy about him, like we'd known each other forever, but also something electric, like every word was a spark. Tasha kept shooting me knowing looks, but I ignored her. I wasn't ready to admit how much I liked the way Javier's laugh made my chest ache. As the sun set, the picnic wound down. Tasha's family started packing up, but Javier suggested we stay a bit longer to catch the stars. Tasha, ever the instigator, smirked and said she'd leave us to it. So there we were, just the two of us on that blanket under a sky turning indigo. The air was cool, and I shivered, wishing I'd brought a thicker jacket. Javier noticed and, without a word, draped his denim jacket over my shoulders. His fingers brushed my collarbone, and I froze, not because it was cold, but because his touch felt like a question I didn't know how to answer. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, his eyes searching mine. I nodded, but my heart was racing. I'd spent years building walls. Growing up black and queer in a world that didn't always make space for either wasn't exactly a picnic. I dated, sure, but it was always casual, always safe. Javier, though, he wasn't safe. He was a storm, and I was standing right in its path. "Eli," he said, leaning closer, his breath warm against the chill. "Can I tell you something?" My throat tightened. "Yeah. I've been watching you all day," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't know how to say this without sounding crazy, but I feel like I've been waiting to meet you." That's when it happened. His hand found mine, his fingers lacing through my own, and he leaned in, his lips brushing mine in a kiss that was soft but sure, like he'd been holding it back for years. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a confession, a collision, a promise. My world tilted, and for the first time I didn't care about the walls I'd built. I kissed him back, my hands finding his face, and in that moment, under the Catskills stars, I felt seen. But then we heard it, a sharp gasp from the trees. Tasha's cousin Marcus, a burly guy in his 30s who'd been quiet all day, stood there, his face a mask of shock and something darker. Javier pulled back, his eyes wide, and I knew instantly that whatever this was, it wasn't going to be easy. Marcus didn't say a word, but his glare burned. He turned and walked back to the parking lot, his footsteps heavy on the leaves. Javier's hand tightened on mine, but I could feel the weight of what was coming. Tasha's family was tight-knit, but not everyone was as open as she was. I'd seen it before. Love that felt like freedom could turn into a battlefield in a heartbeat. "Javier," I said, my voice shaky. "What do we do now?" He looked at me, his jaw set. "We figure it out. Together." The next morning, I woke up with Javier's jacket still draped over my chair, the scent of cedar and his cologne clinging to it. My apartment in Brooklyn felt too small to hold the whirlwind of last night's kiss. But my phone was already buzzing with Tasha's texts. "Eli, what the hell happened after I left? Marcus is acting weird." My stomach sank. I didn't know how to explain that her cousin's kiss had rewritten my entire universe, or that Marcus's reaction felt like a storm cloud over it. I met Tasha at our usual coffee shop in Park Slope, a cozy spot with mismatched chairs and the best oat milk lattes in the borough. She was already there, her braids pulled into a high bun, her eyes narrowed like she was ready to interrogate me. "Spill," she said, sliding a latte across the table. I told her everything. Javier's laugh, the way his hand felt in mine, the kiss that made the stars feel closer. Her face softened, but when I mentioned Marcus, her brow furrowed. "He's traditional," she said carefully. "Grew up in a strict household. He's not a bad guy, but he's got some old-school ideas about, stuff like this." "Stuff like what?" I asked, though I already knew. Tasha sighed. "You and Javier. He's not exactly waving a pride flag, Eli." I stared into my coffee, the foam swirling like my thoughts. I dealt with disapproval before. Family, strangers, even a few exes who couldn't handle the weight of being out. But this felt different. Javier wasn't just some guy. He was Tasha's family, and that made the stakes higher. That afternoon, Javier called. His voice was steady but tight, like he was holding something back. "Marcus told my aunt," he said. "She's not thrilled. Wants to talk to me tonight." My heart dropped. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we're not hiding," he said firmly. "I'm not ashamed of you, Eli. I'm not ashamed of this." His words were a lifeline, but they didn't erase the fear creeping in. I'd spent so long guarding my heart, and now it was out there, exposed. I wanted to believe we could face this together, but doubt gnawed at me. What if his family rejected him? What if this was too much, too soon? That evening, I met Javier at a small park near his apartment in Astoria. He looked tired, his curls messier than usual, but his smile was still there, softer now. "Aunt Celia's upset," he admitted, sitting on a bench beside me. "She thinks I'm confused. That moving to New York messed with my head. Marcus didn't help. Kept saying I was disrespecting the family." I winced. "What did you say?" I told her I'm not confused. I know exactly who I am. He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "And I know I want this. With you." My chest tightened, a mix of hope and dread. "Javier, what if they don't come around? Your family's important to you." He looked out at the park, where kids were playing tag under the streetlights. "They are. But so are you. I'm not choosing between you." We sat there, hands clasped, as the city hummed around us. For a moment it felt like we could take on anything. Marcus, his aunt, the world. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Tasha. "Marcus is telling everyone. Be careful." The next week was a blur of whispers and tension. Tasha tried to play peacemaker, talking to her relatives, but Marcus's version of the picnic had spread like wildfire. Javier and I kept meeting in secret, late-night walks in Prospect Park, stolen moments in dive bars where no one knew us. Each time, his touch felt like a rebellion, a quiet defiance against the judgment closing in. One night, we ended up at a rooftop bar in Williamsburg, the Manhattan skyline glittering across the river. Javier was quieter than usual, his camera resting on the table between us. "I took some photos of you at the picnic," he said, pulling out his phone. He showed me a shot of myself laughing, my eyes bright, the forest glowing behind me. "This is how I see you," he said. "Free." I wanted to cry. No one had ever looked at me like that, like I was enough just as I was. But the weight of his family's disapproval was heavy. "Javier, what if this tears your family apart?" He shook his head. "They'll come around, or they won't. But I'm not letting them decide who I love." The word love hit me like a freight train. We hadn't said it yet, but there it was, raw and real. I reached for his hand, but before I could speak, my phone lit up with a call from Tasha. Her voice was panicked. "Eli, Marcus showed up at my place. He's pissed. Says Javier's ruining the family name. He's coming to find you." My blood ran cold. Javier's face hardened. "Let him come," he said, but I could see the fear in his eyes. We left the bar and headed to my apartment, hoping to avoid a confrontation. But Marcus was already there, leaning against a street lamp outside my building. He was broad-shouldered, his face set in a scowl. "Javier," he called, his voice low and dangerous. "We need to talk." I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "This isn't just about him, Marcus. It's about me, too." Marcus's eyes flicked to me, cold and unyielding. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about you two. It's about family, tradition, respect." "Respect," Javier snapped, stepping between us. "Respect is letting me live my truth. I'm not hurting anyone, Marcus." "You're hurting all of us," Marcus shot back. "You think you can just do whatever you want? You're throwing away everything we stand for." The argument escalated, voices rising until neighbors peeked out their windows. I felt helpless, caught between Javier's fire and Marcus's rage. Finally, Javier grabbed my arm. "We're done here," he said, pulling me inside. But as the door closed, Marcus's words echoed in my head. "You're throwing away everything." I looked at Javier, his face flushed with anger and pain, and wondered if love was worth this kind of war. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Javier and I grew closer, our bond forged in stolen moments and whispered promises. But the shadow of his family's disapproval loomed large. Tasha did her best to mediate, but even she couldn't sway Marcus or Aunt Celia. They saw our relationship as a betrayal, a stain on their values. It hurt, but Javier's resolve kept me grounded. "We're building something real," he'd say, his hand in mine. "They can't take that away." One evening, Tasha invited us to a small gathering at her place, a chance to clear the air. I was skeptical, but Javier insisted. "If we don't face them, they'll think we're ashamed," he said. So we went, my heart in my throat. Tasha's apartment was packed. Cousins, aunts, even Marcus, who stood in the corner like a storm waiting to break. The air was thick with tension, but Tasha, ever the optimist, tried to keep things light, passing around drinks and playing music. Javier stayed close to me, his shoulder brushing mine, a silent reminder that we were in this together. Then Aunt Celia spoke up, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Javier, I raised you to respect our family. What you're doing, it's not right." The room went quiet. Javier's jaw tightened, but his voice was steady. "Auntie, I love you, but I'm not disrespecting anyone. I'm just loving who I love. Celia's eyes filled with tears. You're choosing him over us. No, Javier said, his voice breaking. I'm choosing me. The words hung in the air, heavy and true. I felt a surge of pride, but also fear. Marcus stepped forward, his face dark. You're selfish, he said. You think this is just about you? What about the kids? What about what people will say? Tasha jumped in, her voice sharp. Marcus, enough. This isn't about you or what people say. It's about Javier and Eli being happy. The argument erupted, voices overlapping, accusations flying. I wanted to disappear, but Javier's hand found mine, anchoring me. Finally, he stood up, pulling me with him. We're not here to fight, he said. We're here to be honest. If you can't accept us, that's on you. We left, the door closing on the chaos. Outside, under the Brooklyn stars, Javier pulled me close. I meant it, he said. I'm choosing me. And you. Tears stung my eyes. I don't want you to lose your family. He smiled, soft and sad. You're my family now, Eli. Months passed, and the wounds from that night began to heal, though not without scars. Tasha became our biggest ally, slowly convincing some of her family to come around. Aunt Celia started calling Javier again, her voice softer, though still hesitant. Marcus stayed distant, but his silence was better than his anger. Javier and I built a life together, small, messy, beautiful. We moved in together, a tiny apartment in Bed-Stuy filled with his photos and my sketches. We fought over dishes, laughed over bad TV, and loved each other fiercely. The world didn't always make space for us, but we carved out our own. One spring evening, we returned to the Catskills, just the two of us, to the same clearing where it all began. The forest was green now, alive with possibility. We spread out a blanket, just like before, and lay under the stars. Javier pulled out his camera, snapping a photo of me, then set it down and kissed me, slow and deep. Remember this place? He asked, his voice low. How could I forget? I said, smiling. You changed everything. He looked at me, his eyes shining. No, Eli. We did. In that moment, I realized the truth. Love doesn't erase the pain or the fight, but it makes it worth it. We'd faced judgment, fear, and doubt, but we'd also found each other. And that was everything. As we lay there, hand in hand, I thought about the signpost from that first day, the one that said, a love that changed everything. It was true. Our love had rewritten our stories, not just as lovers, but as people who chose to live authentically, no matter the cost. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And in a world that often tried to tear us apart, that was enough.